Lauren, can you explain to us first the process in the release in the numbers and what we can expect?
Sure. Everyone's talking about these numbers. What do they mean? Okay, so in late December, the apportionment numbers were delivered to the president. What were those numbers? Well, in the United States, the resident population is 308,745,538. This is an increase of 9.7%. The most populous state was California. The least populous state was Wyoming. The state that gained the most as a percentage was Nevada. The South and the West picked up the bulk of the population increase. The Northeast and the Midwest also grew, but not as much. And that's why New York lost 2 congressional seats. So what's next? Now, in late March, either the 3rd or 4th week, the redistricting numbers are coming out. And for each state, they've all been released at different times, and it's all in accordance to what the federal numbers are. But what will those numbers be, okay? So you're going to see total population, you're going to see the voting age population, and you're going to see housing occupancy. Also, the breakdown will be white, Black, African American, Asian, American Indian, Native Hawaiian, some other race, 2 or more races, and then the big deal, Hispanic or Latino. Now, why are these numbers important? What is redistricting? And that sets up the boundaries, the election boundaries at the state level. So you have the Assembly and the Senate, and then at the county level, and then also at the city level. But why is it so important? Because it's all based, the boundaries, on the party that's in power. And so now you're going to see this big fight over the process of redistricting. And I'm telling you, that's going to be the big story this year.
As if we didn't have enough to worry about coming out of the Capitol. Political implications, social implications as well, federal funding for various programs based on population. You did outreach for the census. Why was that needed?
Well, my title was Partnership Specialist, and I was in charge of outreach from Albany all the way up to Plattsburgh. And my focus was the Latino population. Why? Because that group is historically undercounted, specifically in this area. Now, of Latinos under the age of 18 living in the United States, 93% are citizens, and 500,000 of those will reach the legal voting age each year for the next 20 years. My job was super exciting. I was able to go out there, and I went into all those little storefront churches. I call them Iglesia de Dioses, and people would run up to me and they wanted to know, I need to know how to fill out this census form. Why? Because they realized a population that was normally invisible is now given a voice and counted.
And we know that every vote counts then. Lauren Rivera Whitlock, thank you so much for breaking down those census numbers. I know you'll be watching them as they come out in the next 2 weeks. Emotions ran high at the Capitol today with grandparents raising grandchildren from across the state gathering in Albany to put a halt to the governor's proposed budget cuts. Cuts they say will directly affect them. News 10's Lauren Rivera Whitlock has more.
With the program helps me.
In fact, the KinCare program helps more than 250,000 grandparents raising grandchildren across the state by giving them financial support.
They cut these programs down. We don't think it's the right cut, and it's coming at the wrong time.
If the cuts are approved, the 8-year-old program is going to take a huge hit, from $3 million to $300,000.
I'm sure we could look at both educationally, from a an emotional and psychological standpoint that these kids do better because they're with family. They're not in an unfamiliar system.
If these children were not in the care of relatives, they would be in the foster care system. The cost of KinCare is $500 per child per year, whereas the average cost of a child in foster care is $22,000.
It would be such an atrocity to cut funding for this, not only from the standpoint of the needs of the grandparents and the grandchildren, but it's not cost effective for society at large.
There are 200 children in the program in the Capital Region. Their grandparents get legal guidance and counseling.
They have built me up, got me helped me with my granddaughter.
Relatives and grandparents that attended today's press conference took the opportunity for the rest of the day to visit with their assembly members and senators here at the state capitol. Lauren Rivera Whitlock, News 10.
This day is Saturday. When love is in the air, there's no telling to what lengths or heights a man might go. CNN's Maria Hinojosa has this story.
U.S. Army Captain Michael Englis has been stationed in Iraq since April. Yes, he's a big, tough soldier, but it's his big heart that makes him do the donkey dance with Iraqi children.
Where's Louis?
It's that same big heart that made him want to surprise his wife all the way back in Bridgeport, Connecticut, with a huge Valentine's Day billboard. You had no clue about this whatsoever?
No clue. I'm surprised. I'm very surprised. I'm surprised.
Captain Englis emailed the billboard company from Iraq and said he wanted to buy one for his wife.
There was really just no way I could say no here's someone who's fighting overseas, away from home. I had to do something.
The company donated the billboard. Captain Englis has ordered lunch for his wife all the way from Iraq and published love poems for her in the local paper. But this love, it goes both ways.
When he's down, one time I sent him our wedding vows so he can remember, what we promised each other, and, to hold our hands, to keep on going. And then one time I was going through my difficult time, so he copied them back for me so we can remind each other. So it's very difficult. Love is definitely needed.
But this young couple makes loving look so easy, even in times of war. Maria Hinojosa, CNN, New York.
After a 40-year UN career, Benon Sevan, the former director of the Iraq Oil for Food program, was suspended by the United Nations. Sevan stands accused by UN investigator Paul Volcker of committing grave acts of conflict of interest for steering lucrative oil sales to a Mideast trading company. Sevan, who denies receiving a penny, was suspended by his former boss and colleague, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan.
No, I think we acted on the report as soon as it came out, and this is not the end, it's the beginning. And we will act on the other reports, other tranches of the report as they come out.
Also suspended, Joseph Stefanidis, now a Security Council officer, who, according to the Volcker report, improperly influenced the awarding of a contract for Lloyd's Register to inspect humanitarian goods flowing into Iraq. Stefanidis also denies Volcker's allegations. Both men will remain on the payroll under UN procedures while appealing their suspensions. Sevan is effectively retired, working for $1 a year while helping with the investigation. The symbolic amount also allows him to keep his visa and remain in the U.S. Now, though, the UN is off limits.
Yes, it means that they should not come onto the premises here unless it's in connection with summoning their defense, which they have 14 days to present in writing.
Sevan may have more than the UN to worry about. He is also the subject of a criminal probe by the U.S. Justice Department, led by the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York. The UN vows to lift his diplomatic immunity if criminal charges are filed. Kofi Annan is also under examination by the Volcker panel. Asked about reports, Volcker is going through his personal emails and correspondence with son Kojo, who is also under scrutiny. Annan told me he's always cooperated and will wait for the results. Richard Roth, CNN, United Nations.
She touched the lives and hearts of so many and brought worldwide attention to the needs of children. Audrey Hepburn is a true legend. Her legacy lives. The stamp being issued today confirms that status and her place in history, not only as a Hollywood legend, but also as a humanitarian legend.
My mother, Ingrid Bergman, always looked up at Audrey Hepburn, this wonderful, charming, delicate actress. In her wonderful, charming, delicate way, became a powerful loudspeaker for children from 160 countries all over the world. She had our total admiration.
Did you see that? Is there anything more important than a child? All of us here tonight are privileged. But we're privileged in a world that allows 40,000 children to die every day. But These lives need not be lost.
Audrey traveled all over the world, and I think she used her fame, her people looking up at her. She became the loudspeaker. She called the attention to something that sometimes is so hard that we want to turn our eyes away. And when you look at the pictures of her embracing children, she's always smiling and she looks happy.
Everybody, put your hands together. Come on, come on, come on.
It's an emergency. 7,000 Africans are dying every day of preventable, treatable disease. This is madness. This is jumbo loads of people falling out of the sky every day, and we have the drugs.
We have all seen how much can happen when presidents, corporate chiefs, and band leaders like my good friend Bono, whom I'm delighted to see here tonight, seize an issue and single-mindedly identify themselves with it. I've got this song that I'm singing, and I keep thinking that if I sing it loud enough and insistent enough, well, then popes or presidents, bankers, bureaucrats, heads of extraordinary corporations will join the growing chorus.
I dedicate this plaque to all people living with HIV and AIDS, the 17 million Africans who have died already from this pandemic, and the 30 million Africans still living with HIV and AIDS.
In a quarter century, ladies and gentlemen, this awful plague has killed more people than all of the wars of the 20th century combined.
You can't get it out of your head. It's haunting. You hear 6,500 Africans die every day of a preventable, treatable disease.
We are citizens of one world, and that those of us who live in the developed world have a responsibility and an opportunity to bring the know-how and the resources, financial and other, to the parts of the world that have been ravaged by poverty and disease.
If we're talking about public diplomacy, these pills are like diplomats. They are an embodiment of global goodwill in 50 or 100 milligrams. And imagine if they reached the poorest parts of the world in that red, white, and blue. Coca-Cola and Elvis used to represent America around the world. Maybe they still do. In this time of crisis, these drugs, these life-saving drugs, are how America should be known.